the idea of politics and the production of utopia is associated with this. And this is where it seems to me the question of the open mind comes. I mean, the open mind for me is not just the open mind that we commonly have. That is, anthropology invites you to keep an open mind about culture, be culturally relativist, accept this, accept that. To be an open mind, to have an open mind, is to always be open to the possibilities. Not to look one side or another. It's not about cultural relativism. It's, as I said, it's about the possibilities of cultural relativism, but also it's about being wary not to lock yourself in cultural relativism, because then you're closing your mind. Cultural relativism does not secure you an open mind. So the open mind is to be open for these possibilities. And the enemies, of course, are actualists. Today, in politics, a lot of people will say to you, wake up, stop dreaming. You're not realist. You're not realist. And what people will say to you, when people say to you, you're not realist, they actually mean you're not actualist. Because they think of reality as simply involving what is and what is about to be. They don't see reality as involving the potentiality. They don't see. So to have an open mind is to link up to what could be, the socially possible, the humanly possible, and even to link up with what might be and what ought to be. And so it is this openness to these possibilities that I'm trying to connect with a certain form of passionate anthropological politics. What I would like to do now, in what's left of the lecture, is move a bit and try and show you how this applies to my own field of research. How I tried, if you like, how I found myself in an impasse in relation to intercultural relations, etc. How I tried to keep an open mind, how I found primitivist anthropology, well, good to think, as we say. It is good to think, primitivist anthropology. It helped me, a dialogue with it helped me solve is a big word, but also helped me enrich my investigation of the very possibilities of the field that I'm working with. The limits of multicultural governmentality is what I always came to. One, the inability of within multiculturalism, the inability of having social relations in which the will of the other is recognized. That is, within multiculturalism, there's always been an openness to the culture of the other, to the presence of the other, but never an ability to actually live with the will of the other. The will of the other, that is, another with an agency that is not under my control. I have even called it, at some stage, political necrophilia, because it's the idea that you kill people politically and then you love them. Multiculturalism is about this political necrophilic tradition, which is a colonial tradition, but also takes us even further. It is the very basis of really instrumental thought in many ways, and we will come to this. Then there is the issue of over-legalism in multiculturalism. The idea that everything has to be done in policy. To solve intercultural relations, you have to have policy, and you have to have more anti-racist policy, and you have to have more government intervening in intercultural relations. And this idea that somehow I was starting to think, well, why doesn't the state piss off? Why doesn't the state just let people be a bit? Of course, the whole idea behind the state not letting people be is that the state stops relations of power from getting nasty. The state comes because if without the state, the powerful will eat the powerless. The white will eat the black, and the state, the multicultural state, comes in the name of anti-racism to stop this. And my feeling is that in the name of stopping bad relations, increasingly the state was stopping the possibility of any relation. The law comes, fixes, and I have this wonderful image from Zizek, though he doesn't put it this way, but I kind of like dramatize it, or he's capable of doing it exactly like this. But the image is that the people who are pursuing their rights, like if I'm a black, fat, gay, male, cripple in the office who doesn't like smoking, I will sort of like make sure that I've got the right of people not smoking on me. And I will make sure that I will get the right to be free from racial sort of like discrimination and racial. I will get the right not to be called fatty. I will get the right sort of like not to be discriminated against myself for being homosexual. I will get all my rights in my office, and then nobody will be talking to me. And I will be happy that I've got my rights and that I'm protected by the law. And so this is the idea of the limits. It seems to me the law comes and protects in the name of transforming a bad relation, and then it stops the very possibility of relation. And so this is what's happening today in multiculturalism. Can we think, and this is the question that comes, can we think of relations outside of the state? And an anthropologist will tell you, yes, of course. Of course, we've been thinking relations outside the state from the very moment anthropology began. This is what anthropology does, thinking about relations outside of the state. Can we think of relations outside the law? Can we think of relations outside the fixed and the overregulated? This is where I start moving into what I call the field of negotiation. You see, when I was a kid in Beirut, I have a very distinctive memory. My mother was very good at going to shops and bargaining, haggling. Even the corner store, she's buying 1 kilo of tomatoes. She will go, well, 2 kilos, $2 a kilo, 2 Lebanese pounds a kilo, that's too much. And she will manage to harass the guy until he says, okay, sort of like have it for this. And she will save 20 cents and she will feel victorious because she negotiated. And I still also remember something very interesting, which was we went to a store, which I still remember its name, it's called Fontana. And we went into the store to buy an electric good. And she paid, and she didn't bargain. And I said to her, how come? And she said, that's a modern store. And you see this idea that it's a modern store. The idea is that the modern is associated with fixity. The idea that the law fixes, and in fixing it disallows this playing around, this moving, haggling, etc. Now, what I'm trying to do, however, is not, and as I hope I will manage, I'm taking you somewhere conceptually, but I don't want you to start thinking in binary oppositions. I don't want you to think a society with the state and a society without the state, a society with law and a society outside the law. That's not my aim. My aim is to capture the limits and see what space is available to us outside the law and in the law. I don't want a society without laws, and I don't want a society where I have to bargain for every bloody thing I want to buy. No, but I do want to see how we can test those limits and where we can find something other than what we are, other possibilities of social relations. And this is, again, where if we go to our thinking about societies outside the state, people must say, oh, my God, society outside the state. This is an anthropologist and historian who has just produced a wonderful book called The Art of Not Being Governed, an Anarchist History of Upland Southeast Asia, James C. Scott. Until shortly before the Common Era, the very last 1% of human history, the social landscape consisted of elementary, self-governing kinship units that might occasionally cooperate in hunting, feasting, skirmishing, trading, and peacemaking. It did not contain anything that one could call a state. In other words, living in the absence of state structures has been the standard human condition. Remember this. I am not arguing that that I want this to return. It's just I want you to remember, and this is what anthropology helps us remember, that, oh, shock horror without a state. What are you talking about? No, it's not shock horror. No, I mean, without a state has been forever. You know, we're just one tiny moment in history where we have a state. So it's not a big deal to think and try and think a bit outside of the state. But of course, if we are anthropologists and working about regulating social relations outside the state, the obvious person to think with is Marcel Mauss and the idea of the gift. It is the standard anthropological text that says to us, well, actually, people have actually managed to have some kind of a contractual relation among each other without a state. I mean, that's very important in Marcel Mauss's work, that the gift is not a predecessor of an economy that became a capitalist economy. The order of the gift is a predecessor of a politics. This was very important for Mauss. And indeed, in a classical reading of Marcel Mauss by Marshall Salin in Stone Age Economics, he says, the gift is the primitive way of achieving the peace that in civil society is secured by the state. Where in the traditional view the contract was a form of political exchange, Mauss saw the exchange as a form of political contract. So this idea that in the order of the gift is an order of social relations, the gift outside of the state. Just in case you think I'm going off into some incredible land, I'm talking about very basic field work. I'm talking about me going, sitting, watching a soccer game. The kids and an Aussie guy, father, comes, sits next to an Indian and says, "G'day." Very simple. Now, This G'day is very interesting to me. It's what I call outside multiculturalism. It might be an intercultural relation, but it's outside multiculturalism. And it is an offering. We are talking about the order of the gift. If I come and say, G'day, I've offered you G'day. Now, that something quite interesting here is going on. People will say, yeah, but there's a power relation. It's an Anglo guy and it's an Indian guy. Yeah, it's a power relation, but this is what I'm telling you. It's not just a power relation. I want to see what else it is. It might be, might not be. But part of what it is a gift. I'm offering you G'day. But not only this, I'm offering you a gift. And I don't know if you're going to give me anything back in return. That is, it is quite a courageous thing, G'day. It's an offering, and then I say, okay, I've made the offering without knowing whether this guy wants the gift, without knowing whether he or she will return the gift. That G'day is quite courageous. It is an ethic is in it, which is very different from multicultural ethic. Because in it is an ethic which says, I am happy to be at the mercy of the other. Now notice, this is not about tolerating the other. This is not about responsibility to the other. We're talking way beyond Levinas here. We're talking about, I am happy to be at the mercy of the other. That is, I've given you the gift, even though I don't know what you're going to do. The moment I give you the gift, I'm at your mercy, because I don't know what you're going to do to me. This moment is an incredibly ethical moment, and this interests me as reciprocity, outside the state, negotiation. This helps me think, is there a possibility of intercultural relations outside the state, outside multiculturalism, that we can click onto to think new ways of relating? Now, you're going to see, if any of you still think that this idea that stopping the state and the law from working might lead to disaster. This is new ways in traffic planning, which Bendigo is the first city which is starting, and it's been happening in Europe. And the idea behind it is this, that these people have started noticing that they are sick and tired of putting traffic sign after traffic sign after traffic sign saying speed limit, speed, etc., 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 etc. And they said, okay, let's open it up. Let's open it up and say, okay, forget about the laws, just work it out. Cars, pedestrians, bikes, work it out. And notice what it's called. This creates a traffic mode of passage by negotiation, rather than right of way. It's not about right, it's about negotiating. But also notice it encourages unpredictability. We don't know, I'm at the mercy. We're moving here. I have to be attuned to otherness. When we are talking about bikes, cars, pedestrians, we are talking about different cultures circulating in the street. We are talking about intercultural relations. We are talking about different ways of thinking, about how different modes of circulating in the world can coexist together. This is what we mean by spaces of negotiation outside of the state. There's big literature in anthropology on the northern hunters. The northern hunters have this wonderful habit of negotiating with the animals that they're about to hunt. They sit down and annoy the hell out of them by telling them, I'm sorry, mate, you know, we're stuck together on this planet, and what can I do? And this is blah, blah, blah. And so much so that they actually have in their mythology now the idea that if they have conducted a good bargain with the animal offers itself to them. And if they're bad shot by any chance, they also have myths in which the animal is that they missed. They go back home and find the animal waiting for them to be shot because they have struck a good deal with him to begin with, and the animal is a kind of like ethical kind of being. Now, Robert Brightman, in his book Grateful Prey, talks about the tension between the logic of reciprocity and the logic of domination. That interests me, and that takes me to a core issue we are dealing with here. The logic of domination, instrumental reason, all of this involves what I call otherness for us. And the logic of reciprocity involves a notion of otherness with us. And what interests me is that none of the anthropological literature creates a duality. None of the no anthropological literature says some kind of like hippie groove where there's a world which is a world of reciprocity opposed to a world of domination. What you get from the anthropological literature is that there are so many societies which try to negotiate the tension between the two orders. Unlike our society in which the order of witness is shrinking. It is a societies that are capable of living the ambivalence. That is, what does it mean? Otherness for us, otherness with us. You know, the bird is forming as a prey. I'm hungry, I want to eat. It's an otherness for me. But the bird is also with me in the sense of its flight makes me alive. Any of you who have a dog, my dog is particularly bouncy, but if I take her to the park and she's bouncing, I bounce. That's what it means, otherness with us. It means our relationship to otherness here is not instrumental. It means, now, no one is saying that the northern hunters live in a Looney Tune mode where all otherness is just with them. They're hunters, but they're saying that when they're about to shoot this bird, they say, if I shoot this bird to eat it, and that is, if I consume it as otherness forming, I have a sense of a loss of its otherness with me. And that's what I have to negotiate. This is the idea. Negotiation has to negotiate itself. Now, we are not talking about different beliefs here. This is, again, I'm trying to show you how good to think is primitivist anthropology. Lévi-Brühl is someone who worked so hard on trying to capture this different way that what he called the natives tried to think outside of. Notice, he says, has there ever existed groups of human and pre-human beings whose collective representation have not been subject to the laws of logic? He's not saying instrumental reason is absent from these people. It seems very improbable. But what he's calling pre-logical does not partake of that nature. It is not anti-logical. It's not alogical. I mean, Lévi-Brühl is a complex person. He's struggling to find the right concept. But what he is trying to capture with the pre-logical is probably what we would call today in psychoanalysis the imaginary. That is, the order of negotiation operates because it is outside the law. It sometimes is outside the law of language. It is about touchy-feely. It's about negotiation is about modalities of being in which language is not the primary mode. These are the sculptures of Phil Price. There are wind sculptures made by this New Zealand artist, and to me, they capture what I'm trying to call negotiation. They are a feel. They are a sense of being with the wind here. There's something of a conspiracy between the sculpture and the wind, in which a relation of witness is established. Now, I want to take you, I don't have that much time, I'm aware, to the industrial version of this, which is, of course, the wind turbine. The wind turbine has a very nice feel to it. The wind turbine, if you look at the wind turbine, it combines two of the classical utopias of the 20th century to begin with. On one hand, it gives you this lovely, touchy-feely, medieval sense of going back. On the other, it's not possible without high-tech metal design. And in this sense, it embodies really how utopia operated for a long time as a critique of capitalism. If you look at socialist critique of capitalism, which has been captured wonderfully in Peter Beilhar's work, this idea that socialism criticizes capitalism for mucking up a good thing. We had a wonderful sense of community and you mucked it up. We want to go back to it. So socialist utopia is seen as a return to. But at the same time, socialist utopia is always a promise. There's always, it is of course a structurally recurrent modality of thought. We start with the Garden of Eden and we want to go to paradise. And somewhere in between, somebody mucks it up. And we try to make up for it. And all of this is in the wind turbine. But the wind turbine is also, and that's what I like about it, is what I would call a technology of negotiation, as opposed to a technology of extraction. Because the wind turbine takes the wind as something for it, but it also takes it as something with it. It relates with it instrumentally, and it relates with it in a modality of negotiation. It embodies both. And so, good old Karl once said, the handmill gives you society with the feudal lord, and the steam mill society with the industrial capitalist. This is, of course, perceived as a classical, technologically determinist statement, which is way out. I like to think this sentence a bit more metonymically, rather than causally. That is, the give in it, rather than say the handmill causes feudal society and the steam mill causes industrial society. I want to use the give to say these mills articulate, they are a metonymy of something that is happening. And extending it to say that maybe the windmill metonymically is something. I'm trying to say that the windmill, that's what I try to say, is part of another sensibility. I'm trying to say that it is part of a network of social relations, which include relations of negotiation, whether we are talking about traffic, whether I'm talking about the guy who says good day, whether we are talking... It's probably what, Raymond Williams would call a structure of feeling, not just. It's part of a structure of feeling. It's a minor structure of feeling, in the sense that our society is dominated still by instrumental reason. But I'm saying that this, through thinking with anthropology and through thinking with classical anthropology, it allows us to see a possibility in the middle of an impasse. And so I tried to establish a differentiation between an order of domestication and an order of negotiation. An order where self-affirmation rules, an order where there's relationality, an order where the other is object, and an order where the other is subject, an order where state law regulated relations, an order which is gift regulated, dyadic relations, an order that is paternal, symbolic of the law, and an order that is maternal and imaginary, an order that is instrumental, looks for clarity and fixity, and an order that is with the sympathetic, the fuzzy, and the ambivalent, where otherness for us, otherness with us, abstract subjects and abstract relations, bodily subjects, totalizing smooth social space and movement, fragmented social space requiring navigation, maneuvering, because that's also part of the order of negotiation. To talk about negotiation is to talk about maneuvering. That's what, to talk about navigating terrains in which you don't have a smooth run. But most importantly, what I tried to say is that this is not the opposition I'm inviting you to think. The opposition is between an order where this is the dominant thing and an order where we can live the ambivalence between the two. What I'm saying is that what distinguishes our age is not that it is a space of domestication as opposed to a different age, which was a space of negotiation. What I'm saying, we are living in an age where the logic of domestication is so overwhelmingly dominant, such that negotiation has shrunk. And what I try to perhaps show is that we are capable of thinking of a different way thanks to anthropology. Anthropology is good for you. Thank you.